All right. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Minding Mind podcast, where we live life with ease, connection, and permission to just be. I'm your host, Evelyn LeVasseur, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I get to sit down with Melina Kane, and we are going to talk all about the seasons of motherhood. And I know you can all relate, so I can't wait for you to hear more. First, let me tell you a little bit about Melina. Melina is a certified life coach and professional organizer, and helps overwhelmed moms clear the clutter in their home, head, and heart so they can focus on what truly matters. As a mom of littles, she found herself drowning in stuff. I feel your pain. Constantly stressed and lacking purpose in her days, she discovered she could reclaim her sanity, joy, and sense of self simply by removing the clutter from her home. Now she helps other moms who are drowning in a season of overwhelm to live the best version of their lives by having their values reflected in their home, their heart, and their habits. Melina, welcome to the show.
Hello. So happy to be here with you.
I'm excited for this conversation. I felt like I knew this conversation would be great just because of the resistance that it took us to even get on a call. We had to reschedule, and now here we are. So I just know that it's going to be great. So before we get into the meat of the topic, why don't you tell us a little bit about like, how did you get here? Like, what did you see for yourself that made you say something's got to give?
Yeah. How did I get here? Isn't that a loaded question?
Yeah.
It's a little bit of me. So I'm born and raised in Austin, Texas. I live here with my husband and two boys, Jackson and Landon, who are 9 and 6. And how I got here, honestly, I feel like it was a windy road to get here. I didn't think, frankly, like if you told me 10 years ago, this is what I would be doing, I'd be like, what? Like I would have never seen that coming. I was working full time with a national home builder, and then I had my first son. And as a working mom, that's a whole shift. As it's your firstborn, you have no idea what you're doing. They doesn't come with a manual. They just give them to you and say, good luck, Godspeed.
Yeah.
And so figuring all that out, and then with my second son coming along, just knowing I wanted to do things differently. And so that looked like me staying home with them and just enjoying that time. I mean, it took a little while to enjoy that time.
Mm.
And as I talk about like the permission piece of it, of like, I'm such a people pleaser. And there's this idea, this vision I had of what it looked like to be a mom, right? And it was totally different than that vision is what kind of like was reality. So moving through those seasons, and then a couple of years ago, just having this kind of nudge to step outside the home and just kind of following that. And it led me to life coaching and I did a deep dive in minimalism about 7 years ago when I decided to stay home. And I looked around and I was like, here we are. And I don't know what I'm doing here either. It's like I feel like every time you become a mom, like with 1 kid, 2 kids, 3, 5, whatever, it's like a new version of yourself gets birthed too. And you're having like this new identity as a mom. And so I found myself there again and just being like, I need to figure out how to do this because this doesn't feel fun. This doesn't feel joyful. Right. So I did a deep dive into minimalism and figured some things out. And that really just kind of changed the trajectory, honestly, for the rest of my motherhood till today.
Amazing. How did you then, because I mean, you just saying the thought that not many of us say out loud, this doesn't feel fun and it doesn't feel joyful, because there is a piece of us that then feels guilty for feeling those feelings. So how did you take like the feeling that you had of this does not feel the way I wanted it to or I expected it to, and then somehow create a life that was more aligned with what you wanted?
I mean, it took a lot of tears, and there was a lot of those feelings felt for a long time. Because for me, I'm an only child.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was also like a surprise baby for my mom. She loved having me. It was just me and her against the world, basically, single mom raising me. But it's like, I'm very much a rule follower. and people pleaser, like I said. And so for me, it's helpful if I see things being modeled and being able to kind of be given permission. I've worked hard on that over the years so that I don't have to seek the permission any longer. But that's a hard thing, like family of origin thing to kind of like break from, right? So for me, I was sitting in that overwhelm and that feeling of like, this is not what I was wanting, what I want for myself or what I want for my kids, because the mom that was showing up, I mean, I wasn't healthy emotionally or physically. And that messes with your mind so much, right? You're just doubting everything that you're doing and you're like you're just a complete failure and all the things. So honestly, what kind of triggered it for me was the fact that it was a choice of privilege, right? I could be working full time, but thankfully, like when we had our second child, I could stay home. I had severe postpartum depression, anxiety with my first. It took 2 years to dig myself out of that hole hormonally and emotionally. And I didn't want it with my second son. So I think just having that perspective of like knowing how bad it could feel and then being where I am with my second and being like, okay, this isn't as bad as that. This doesn't feel as heavy, but it's still not where I want to be, you know? And frankly, it was more of that tension of feeling like I want to give myself permission to like not have all the food prepped and ready that week, to spontaneously go to the park, even though we're getting really close to nap time, just to be like more, I am not a spontaneous person. So that's where that comes from. And I feel like when you're in those little years of motherhood, like when they're so young, for me, I felt like I had to be so rigid in what my schedule was and what I was doing that it didn't allow for that feeling of freedom. Like I am home. This is what I've dreamed of. I can do whatever I want, but I still felt like I didn't have the permission to do that.
Yeah. Do you feel like that need to be rigid and organized and intentional with your time impacted the way that you connected with the boys?
Yes. I feel like when it's like that weight, it's almost feel that burden and you almost kind of feel like I'm more focused on that than I am on them, right? I'm more concerned about the nap schedule than I am about, what we're doing right now in the present. That's what I feel like, at least for me, like I felt like motherhood in those early years was like very much like you're always like future focused on like, what's the next thing I need to do? Like it's the nap, it's the feeding, it's the grocery pickup, or it's the daycare pickup, preschool pickup, whatever that is. It's like, it's always future focused and it's hard to be really present where you are, especially when you have multiple kids. Yeah.
That is so true. I'm picturing myself back. I mean, my daughter's 15 now and my youngest is 12, but I remember those times where it was like, even if I was going to go somewhere, it was planned around the nap. It was planned around, there was no like spontaneity. It was just, I guess at times I could feel some sense of spontaneity, like let's pack it up and go to the park. But then you'd be like, okay, we got to go. It's nearing nap time, like, right? Like rushing back to your schedule. So I could totally see how you're saying, like when you say it, it hits different just to recognize that when you're so focused on that list, that to do, then you really ultimately take away from the now. I'm going to have to sit on that. That's an important thing to remember. I think even today is still important to remember that, even today.
Oh, 100%.
Consistent
100%.
reminder.
I have to today, like I honestly, because it's such an ingrained thing, right? It's not even just from my own childhood. It's just like, as you're trained as a mom, right? I have to today, like stop myself intentionally and go do other things, like go hang out with the boys or do things like that, just to like put a pause on that natural need or the groove in my brain to just like keep going. Does that make sense? So yeah.
I love that thought. So tell me, you had this realization that you wanted differently. You wanted to be able to live more presently. You started like dabbling in, I know that, okay, I don't know a lot about minimalism. In my mind, it is less stuff. which sounds great to me. But what does it actually mean if it's not just that thing, that idea I have in my mind? And how did you start to implement that in your home with two boys?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think everyone has a different definition of minimalism. Some people, when they think of minimalism, they think, it's white,
Yeah.
white and beige. Like there's maybe like 20 things in the whole home. Like there's just not a lot of stuff. Feels very airy, very like museum-like is what I kind of think of when I think of that. My version of minimalism, because I think it's like with everything. Like when you think of something that you want to adopt, you take that version and you make it your own, right? So what I took from minimalism is it's really more centered around what's most important to you. It's that's what for me is what's it's rooted in and centered in is like what's most. And so how that translated after like I listened to so many podcasts, read so many books. Like, I mean, I just like binged it all because I knew I was like, I don't want to be stuck in this cycle of feeling so overwhelmed in my day where I don't feel like I had any time for myself, no time to really like enjoy being with my boys, and just feel like I'm failing all the time. Like there wasn't when you're a mom, whether you're a working mom or stay-at-home mom or somewhere in between, you are not getting gold stars and high fives. Like nobody's doing that for you. The children are too young to do that for you. Like they can't even, they give you hugs and kisses,
Yep.
but you're not getting that verbal affirmation. And so it can be really, it just feels like you're pushing a boulder up a hill when you're like, I'm doing so much every day that it feels like I'm getting nothing done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So for me, it was getting really clear. Melissa helped me get really clear on like what's most important to me. What's most important to me in my day, and kind of redefining what success as a mom looks like and feels like for me. Because I think if I looked outward, that meant a perfect house all the time. That meant no dishes in the sink, no piles of laundry anywhere. It's a beautiful meal, like with all the food groups on the table every night. I looked well put together and showered all the time. And nobody's got time for that. That is unrealistic. That is unrealistic. So instead, I took it on and I adopted it to me. I'm like, okay, so what's most important to me for today or in this season of life? Because I feel like that is the biggest question you can ask yourself is in this season of life that you're in, what's most important to you? Because every season is different. Every season is different. And what was important to me, even last year is different than it is today. Right. So for me in that season, when I was in with the littles, was I wanted to not feel like I was just drowning every day, that I actually had time to spend with them. And I felt like I wasn't just in a constant like rinse and repeat cycle. So what that meant was the decluttering. Like that was the first piece of the pyramid for me.
Okay.
I was like, if I got rid of the stuff, because everything that you own, you're managing. It's your time. You're managing your time with it. You're managing just the mental load of seeing it in your home. You're managing keeping it tidy and clean. So everything in your home, it's costing you something in some way, shape, or form. And so when the kids are little, I mean, they have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
If they don't have a lot of stuff, people will gift you the stuff,
Yes.
right? So it's going to be stuff in your home. So the idea for me was like, okay, we got to start with some small things here. Like, what can we actually like declutter so that I don't have to keep up with it? Like laundry. I mean, my mom, bless her, gave so many clothes of things. Sometimes it was duplicates of the same shirt. Bless her. It's like I had to take those down a little bit because otherwise I'm doing laundry every day, all day, right? I mean, if they're there, we're going to wear them or or they're going to be all over the room or something. And it's like, okay, well, what's one thing I could do? Take off my plate where I don't do just loads and loads of laundry or spend 5 hours on a Saturday or 6 hours on a Saturday doing laundry. It's taking down like the number of clothes that they actually own. And like they're boys. So I'm not a girl mom. I know there's a lot more accessories that go involved with the girls than it do with the boys. But so that's the first thing I did is like we took down the amount of clothes that they actually owned.
Did you
And
do
then
it for yourself as well?
yes, they were first
Okay.
because, going back to mom in that stage, I wasn't wearing a whole lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're wearing some yoga pants and a t-shirt, right? So I was not dressing to the nines or doing lots of like days out and looking super cute. So my clothes, there wasn't a lot of laundry for me. It was really just more focused on them.
Yeah.
So we did them and then eventually got to me and went through the clothes and that helped a ton. Just doing that in itself helped so much because I got time back in my day, right? Instead of spending 6 hours on a Saturday doing all that and sorting all of it and folding it and putting away, like I cut it in half. And then I taught my children how to do it, right?
Mhm.
They can start to do that. There's at least by, I'd say at least by 3, they can start helping. They can start sorting. They can do colors,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. So that was part of it. It was like teaching them of like, it's responsibility. It's a life skill. I went to college. I didn't know how to do laundry. I didn't know how to do it. I learned real quick how to do it because I ruined
Yeah.
clothes. But I mean, that's a life skill that like, that's important for them to know. And one of the things I say in our house all the time is like, you live here, you help here.
Yeah.
Like we are a team. This is not mom doing this all on her own.
Mhm.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. I mean, if you like a well-functioning, healthy mom, I can't do it all on my own.
Yep.
Right. So that's kind of how I took minimalism. So like I said, it can look different for everyone, but it's not that perfection, that austere, that like just nothing in your home. It is reducing the amount of stuff in your home,
Yeah.
but with the purpose of not trying to strive for perfection, but really for the purpose of supporting you in the
Mhm.
season that you're in and the life that you really want to lead.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of see, I wouldn't say that my house is minimalistic at all, but I will say that what I keep in my home has to be important to me. Like I used to keep everything, if like all the birthday cards I was given, all the things that my parents gave me, just I kept things. I want to say it was more out of obligation because I felt like they loved me. They gave this thing to me. Therefore, what am I showing if I get rid of it?
Mhm.
When in reality, it was, yes, they love me. And this clutter is causing me stress. And if I get rid of the clutter, that doesn't mean I don't love them. It just means that I love peace in my space. So we're not minimalistic here at all, but definitely like I guess intentional is my word. I would say we're just intentional about what we keep. I'm very intentional about what I keep because I also want to be very intentional about how much time it takes me to upkeep what I keep. So
100%, 100%. And
yeah.
with like that obligate, because I feel like, I mean, people always feel that, right? Like they are gifted something, it's something that the kids got for Christmas or you received or something like that. And the way to reframe it is, they gave you this gift. That in itself was the gift.
Yeah.
They don't want you to be on the other side of that gift and it causing you stress or overwhelm. Like that is not the purpose of why they gave it to you in the first place. They gave you the gift in hopes of giving you joy
Yeah.
or serving you in some way, right? So I think when you're holding on to something and you start to feel that, like you said, like the overwhelm of it, that is definitely an indicator of like that's not the purpose of this gift. If it's getting to that point, then I need to release this.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you help now you're saying you help moms like tackle that overwhelm and
Mhm.
create like, space in their heart and their mind and their habits, right?
Mhm.
Through some decluttering as well. Take me through like, what does it look like when you work with someone who comes to you and is like, Melina, I have no time or energy for anything. I'm
Mhm.
exhausted and burnt out. Like, where do you start?
Yeah. I literally had a conversation this last weekend about it. Honestly, the first place I start is like, okay, tell me a little bit of like, what does your day look like? Because this goes back to like, what kind of season are you in? How old are your kids? What does your time look like day to day? Are you working full time? Are you working in the home? Like that gives me a good idea of like, okay, like the capacity that they have. Because if they're coming to me, like I know that there's some rhythms that need to be put in place, some routines. And the biggest one is the clutter piece, because it's, again, it's sucking their time and it's sucking the joy out of their everyday. So those are one of the first places I start, is like, okay, paint me a picture of what kind of season of motherhood you're in, to help give me a frame of mind. And then we kind of go through, okay, what is like your biggest pain point right now? What is it that's just keeping you up at night, or that feel like you're constantly like, it's just this big obstacle in your day, right? It could be literally just like the toys are just everywhere. That they just never get picked up. It just feels like they just live on the ground. You don't even know what color your rug is anymore.
Yeah.
They're just always there, right? It could be the laundry. Like that, I mean, like when I was talking to my client this weekend, it's just, there's either a clean or dirty load, or like to be put away load at some point. Like everything is in flux somewhere in the home, right? It could be like you don't even know how to get meals like prepared and on the table. So it just depends for them, like what's the biggest pain point. And then from there, I can kind of figure out, okay, so based on the season that you're in right now, your biggest pain point, also kind of getting a pulse on like, how are you feeling? There's a lot of emotions and a lot of self-talk around that. There's a lot of thoughts associated with it. And so depending, kind of where they are, how open they are to talking about everything, kind of diving into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the thing is like the clutter, it's just an outward expression of what's going on internally, right? So, and that's not to shame anyone or raise the alarms. It's more just like clues. So if your house is in complete disarray, that means that's a clue. Like what we were talking about earlier about, if it's a pebble or it's a rock, like things have like, you got to pay attention. It's just like, pay attention to what's going on around you. And I feel like for moms, we don't pay attention real well to ourselves. We do to everyone else and everything else, but not really to ourselves. Like your home could look amazing, but you are flat out tired, exhausted, and sick most of the time, right? Is that really worth it to you? Is that really how you want to be showing up for yourself every day? Probably not. Nobody wants to be feeling like that every day, even though your house looks amazing. Who cares? Frankly, like I know that sounds weird coming from someone like me, but it's like, there is no dish police coming into your home looking to see that there's no dishes in the sink, or that your fridge looks like picture perfect all the time. No one really cares that much. It really comes down to like what's important to you. Some people don't want to see clutter on the surface. Cool. Let's talk about that. We can work through that, figure out a system for you. Some people, the food is a big thing, right? The meal prep, figuring that out, having like some systems in place just so they can find the food, and then have an easy system to like make lists for their groceries or recipes and things like that. So it really comes down to, again, like what's important to you in this season, and what's your biggest pain point? And then we can kind of work through that and talk about the emotional piece of that too. There's a component to it there too.
Two things came up for me while you were speaking. First of all, when you said the food, I was triggered immediately because nobody warned me that being an adult was going to be like, what's for meals 3 times a day for the rest of my life? Like, I feel like I should have been more properly warned about the amount of cooking that would take place in adulthood.
100%.
But the other thing is, it's so, no matter how many of these conversations I have, regardless of the specialty that my guest is speaking in, I see so many parallels with the work that I do. When women come and say to me, I am so uncomfortable in my body. I just need to lose 20 to 30 pounds. I want to start there, right? Like there is always this correlation between their body and the internal reality that they have. And that's why I've moved so far away from just fitness coaching and really getting into that identity piece, because I now 100% believe that you can only have a life that you feel worthy of, right? Like everything that you have in your life is a result of how you feel about yourself. And Like that internal deep dive is so important in recognizing like what stories am I telling myself? Like what am I holding on to? And then really being able to move past the physical desires and start looking at what even makes me smile? Like what brings me joy? What can I do in my day that actually makes me feel good about just being me, right? And what am I doing that maybe is keeping me away from the life that I want? Like, how am I kind of designing a life that is exhausting to me? How am I maybe taking part in some self-sabotage? There's so many pieces of it that are intertwined with this. When your house is in disarray, it's because your heart and your mind are too. And when your body feels uncomfortable, it has so little to do with just food choices, right? It has so much to do with how you feel about yourself, what you're telling yourself, your culture, your habits, your history, like, your mental fitness, like everything is so intertwined that truly when you start to see the value in who you are, you start to create a life that reflects that. So I love that connection between, yes, there are things that we can control outside of ourselves, but it has to start with how we feel inside first.
100%.
I
Yes.
love that.
Yes. Because it's just I know that we can talk about this here because you understand it's the thoughts that you're telling yourself.
Mm.
It's the thoughts. I mean, the loop that we have in our minds as moms, there's a script. I mean, they talk about like there's 30 to 60,000 thoughts a day that we have. And I mean, I guarantee you most of those thoughts are not positive ones.
Mm.
And so you think about it. I mean, I was talking to my client this week and I was like, what is the thought that comes up when you come into your home and it's in disarray? Like, what's the first thought that comes up? It's negative, of course. It's like, I should have been able to do that better. Why can't I go spend time with my kids and have this perfect home? Like, what's wrong with me? Right. And I know people have said this, it's like, I would never repeat that to you. I would never say, Evelyn, what's up with you? Why is your house like such a mess? What have you been doing? Why did you go spend time with your kids versus making sure that this looked amazing? I
Mhm.
can't come in here. I'm not stepping foot in your home.
Yeah.
Like, never, ever would we say that to somebody else, but that's exactly the kind of thoughts that we're saying to ourselves. Like
Mhm.
how just unworthy we are of like what we've accomplished for that day or haven't accomplished for that day.
Mhm.
Right. So there's so much mind work in
Yeah.
this,
Yep.
mind and heart work. I mean, it's so correlated,
Mhm.
but because people are so overwhelmed in their space, there's not even the capacity to get to that level yet. Right. It's like you have to take the pain points, the real like visceral pain first, the clutter, and then that creates space
Yeah.
to go a little bit deeper and like, let's talk about those thoughts. Let's talk about
Mhm.
what's going on in your heart now that you've created a little bit more breathing room for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You're even reminding me of a past version of myself that used to say whenever somebody came in the front door, I'm sorry for the mess, or, please excuse X, Y, and Z. Where today, like, if you're coming into my home, I need you to walk in the door knowing that people live here. We live here. You know, yes, it's clean. And when I mean clean, I mean like there's not dirt all over the place, but everything is not in place all the time. And we live here. Like we're here all the time. And I don't know, it's just that perspective for me was recognizing that, like letting go of that. I'm not perfect. My house doesn't have to be perfect. My kids don't have to be perfect. Like I want my kids to look back at their childhood and remember, you know, things that we did together that were silly, or like spending an afternoon outside instead of like mommy yelling about doing 6 hours of chores on Saturdays, because that's how when I grew up, it was like Saturday morning, first thing, my parents were opening the bedroom door. Let's go. It's time. Everybody's cleaning now. Let's go. You got your jobs. And it's like Saturday morning at our house, it's like sleep in as long as you want.
Mhm.
Okay. Because it's Saturday. just going to relax. But I always apologized for my space when people came over. And now I don't know. We live here and I'm never going to apologize for my home.
Yes. Yes, please.
Yes.
Because what's interesting is that when you apologize, the first thing when they come in, do you know what happens? They take that back with them and then think like, oh, I've got to apologize for my place too. If she's apologizing for this, man, she doesn't want to come to my house, and that's not, I mean, that in my mind, like mothers, women need community dearly, dearly. Like that is, it's one of my core values is connection and community. And so you think about it when you're in a place where you feel like you're apologizing or you feel like your home isn't good enough for somebody to come over, that just causes so much just disruption in having a village around you, because you're then keeping your house from you having deeper relationships with others. And we desperately need those relationships. So I encourage anybody that's listening, like, please don't let the state of your home keep you from connecting with others. They don't care. They are there to see you. You're the reason that they are there because they love you, they care about you, they want to spend some more time with you. They don't care about the state of your home. They don't. Don't even mention it.
Yeah.
Make it extra messy, actually, and invite them over. It'll probably do them a favor. They'll be like, oh my gosh, she's so brave. I can come over and it looks like this. Wow, I wonder what I can do. I bet, okay, maybe she can come over to my house.
Yeah.
And it just creates this comfort level of like, you're accepted just as you are. I accept you, accept your home. I'm here for you and your friendship.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think that I'm also seeing another parallel with my clients. I do a lot of helping them reframe the comments that cause like shame and guilt, right? That self-talk that, I shouldn't have eaten this. I wish I had more self-control. I'm not disciplined, XYZ. I try to get them to reframe and just recognize like there are behaviors that we do in certain times. And truly, those behaviors are just data. Like if you were super stressed out yesterday and you overate your dinner, then let's not look at the overeating. Let's look at the data. What happened? What was stressing you out? What made you feel uncomfortable? What made you disconnect from your body in those moments? What made you ignore yourself? What were you trying to numb down, really, right? And let's talk about that, because the data is nothing more than something that clues you in to what you actually need. And if you could forever look at the need and ignore the judgment, you'll be able to replace a lot of that shame and guilt with pleasure and joy, right? So I look at now when you're talking about that at home, like if I see that my house is messy, for example, instead of beating myself up and saying like I should be able to take care of this, I'm home all day long, because that's a story that's a story I gave myself, like you work from home, why can't you just do this? But instead look at it and say like what's not working for me here? Right? Like maybe there is some, I don't know, dispersing of things that needs to be done, responsibilities or whatever it is. There's a need that I have that's not being met. And all I have to do is look at the data, because the data is always talking.
Yes. Your home is always talking to you. Your home is always talking to you. And you're always talking back. You're always talking back, whether it's verbal, like outright, or in your actions. And the other side of the coin of that is there's a lot of discontent that people have in their home because we're flooded with pictures of these enormously beautiful, perfect homes, that there are people that are so gifted in decorating, styling, right? I mean, just the amount of creativity, it will never come out of me. But that gives you this feeling of discontent that comes in as well when you walk around your home. So it's not just the clutter that you notice sometimes, it's also just like, I wish our floors were a different color, or gosh, this color of the walls, it just drives me crazy, or this, lamp fixture, or the ceiling fan, or, the countertops. So it goes back to like thinking about, okay, the home, in my opinion, is one of the most important places in the whole wide world. so much happens in that home, in your home. Like I want it to be a place of rest, of security, a sanctuary, a haven. Like that's what I want for my children when they come home is like, I want you to feel like enveloped. I want you to feel safe here. Right. But if I'm going around talking and thinking about my home in this way, that's just, it's creating more negative energy in the home versus going around and saying things like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that we have running water. I love so much that we have working AC because frankly, in Texas in the summers, you got to have some working AC. We've lived without it and it's really hard.
Yeah.
Or it's like, I just love sitting by the window and having my coffee here in the morning. Like I love this natural light, or I love that we have some grass that boys can play on. So it's this also this reframe that I think is helpful that a lot of people don't think about because it's so easy with those eyes, those judgy eyes, you know, that you see outwardly of like, it's so messy, it's so this, it's so dated, it's not perfect, it doesn't look like that picture on the Instagram. It's also changing that dialogue when you're going around and just seeing your home and just really appreciating what's around. That also will help so much internally because then you start to care a little bit more. And it sounds weird, but it's like it almost becomes this extension of your family because you're like, I care for my home. It takes such good care of us. I want to take care of it. How can we do that? How can I include my children and my husband to help take care of the home too? Because this is a place, this is our safe place. And I hope it's a safe place.
Yeah.
But, that's something that's like creating that energy and that feeling in your home.
I think there's also the other part of that is that feeling that looking at what other people have will make you feel less than, right? Like that comparison, whether it's the house or the car or the furnishings or the decor, like you said, or the body, whatever it is that you're constantly focused on what they have that you don't, just perpetuates this feeling that I will never be enough, right? And the truth is like, not one of those things defines how valuable or worthy you are. Like when I think about the years that I spent trying to have this body, right? Like where today I can say, I look at myself and I know that my body is like literally the least relevant thing about me. I know that we could turn the camera off and my words are impactful, right? I know that in my home, the relationships that we have in here are beautiful. And I did that, right? Because I started to have a beautiful relationship with myself. So just being able to 100% look around your house and even take some time staring at yourself and look at all the things you can love about you, it doesn't change just the way you look at your house, but it changes the way you look at you. It changes the way you show up. It changes the way you connect. It changes the way that you look at what you have and recognize that you literally are living something that you prayed for before, I love that. Just the reframe of look at me and look at this life I have right now.
Yeah, it completely rewires because it helps you look at it through different lens.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of the have-nots, all that I have, all that I have. And I definitely suggest to friends and clients, like if there are, accounts that you're following on social media that are making you feel icky, judgmental, the have-nots, unfollow. You don't have to follow them, but if you're just there for inspiration, then let it just be inspiration. Don't make it a measuring stick. Don't make it a measuring stick because it's like you're going to lose every time because that's curated.
Yeah.
Your life is not meant to be curated. It's meant to be messy. Your home is meant to be messy. It's meant to be lived in. I 100% agree with that. I don't tell my clients like I'm not going to make your home look 100% tidy all of the time. That's not the point. That's not what I want for you. It's just meant to serve you and support you better than it is today.
Yeah.
Right. So definitely unfollow some accounts that aren't making you feel good about yourself, your body, or your home, or your life. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Melina, so if someone, let's say, is looking to work with someone like you, where could they find you? And like, what do you offer as far as I know you've mentioned that you are doing some coaching. How do you do your coaching? What do you offer right now?
So what I'm offering right now is I do virtual or in person. So if you're in the Austin area in Texas, you're welcome to hit me up and we can go shoulder to shoulder and I can come in your home. But I do virtual. That's probably the easiest way people can work with me. So right now I'm offering where it's basically you get me for a whole month. So we do coaching calls every week and we'll sit down just like we talked about earlier. It's like we'll go through like what season of life you're in, what are your biggest pain points, and we're going to try to like tackle your top 3. Like whatever that is. Maybe it's the actual physical stuff in your home. Maybe it's the rhythms and routines that you have in your home that need to better support you. So you get me for a whole month and you can Voxer. It's like this walkie-talkie thing that we do as well as an app. So that's probably the easiest way that you can work with me. And as far as finding me around, so speaking of, the accounts, so I was pretty active on Instagram and I've kind of walked over to LinkedIn recently. So I'm kind of playing in both. But I've taken note of my own self and being like, I need to step back a little bit from social media as well. And summer is coming, depending on when you're hearing this. And so like I'm all for just kind of like relaxing a little bit more into the laziness of the days and just enjoying and just being more present where we are.
I love a lazy day.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Before I can let you go, the question of the hour is, in the Minding Mind community, we're all about being intuitive and instinctual and silencing the outside world and really learning to make decisions based on the essence of who you are. So how do you believe that minding yours, living the way that suits you best, impacts the legacy that you leave?
So I love this question. So I truly believe that moms are the heart of the home and we have such a role and an impact for generations to come. Like how we live our life is a ripple effect for generations, right? And the legacy that I want to leave for my boys, I honestly just want them to feel so loved with exactly who they are today. They are perfect who they are today. I'm always walking around and I want to make sure, like, have I told you today that I love you? And they're like, Mom, Mom.
Yes, Mom. Yeah.
And I'm like, I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that you feel so loved by me and by your dad here, and that you are perfect as you are. And as you continue to evolve into the man that you're going to become, I can't wait to see that. And so hopefully they get to see it modeled in me, that I continue to evolve and I continue to change and become the best version of myself in all the different seasons, even though I'm not perfect, that I'm well loved.
Yeah.
And so I want that for them. And I hope and pray so much that they are able to pass it on to their children and to their wives. Yes. So that's what I'm saying.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I have no doubt. I'm going to link your LinkedIn, your Instagram in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your wisdom and all of your lessons with us. And I want to thank everyone for joining both of us today and tuning into another episode of Minding Mind. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to comment, rate, and review the podcast. Your feedback helps me grow. And until next time, I want you to go live your life on your terms and mind your business. We will catch you in the next episode.